Hey guys, Dr. Christy Ennis. Today we are going to go over how to get rid of this sharp pinching pain that you might feel on the front or the side of that shoulder with reaching across or reaching behind or reaching up, like sweating to the oldies, and I'm totally dating myself there, or maybe sweating with me in one of my other workouts. No, I don't do a ton of overhead stuff. But today we're going to go over what might be causing this, what it is, how to fix it, what not to do. That's also really important. So, number one, oftentimes this pain is caused by something called shoulder impingement, specifically an external impingement. Now, what impingement is a narrowing of the space between the collarbone and this humerus, right, this big shoulder bone. And that little space has tendons, it has a bursa. So that space is pretty darn narrow to begin with. But what happens in impingement is that it gets even narrower and it starts to smush and compress those structures that are inside, oftentimes leading to some tendinitis or bursitis. So why does that happen? So number one, there's a muscle imbalance, okay? And very often it's because these lovely shoulder muscles are a lot stronger than those rotator cuff muscles and those muscles that help support the scapula. So what happens when you raise your arm, those shoulder muscles are supposed to help that humerus go up, right? It's supposed to help it raise up. The rotator cuff muscles are kind of steering everything. They're to help pull kind of off at an angle at the side. So when those aren't working, what happens is that humerus just keeps going up and it goes bang, 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 not with that noise, but it does jam right into that space and then compress on those structures. So that happens from, right, poor posture or even a lot of overhead lifting without getting some of those smaller muscles, which we'll talk about today for sure. Number two is just plain old darn overuse. So if you are somebody that does a lot of overhead activity, that space is narrow to begin with. So even if you're really strong, a lot of times it just gets pinched because it's constantly getting used. So that's number two. Number three is an alignment issue. So if that thoracic spine, that middle part of the spine, or that shoulder blade are forward, now we're also affecting how that humerus is moving, and it's not allowing to get that lovely glide and slide that it's supposed to get to. So the goal today is really to open up that joint space with a little soft tissue work that you can do on your own and a little strengthening. Now there are some tests you can actually do at home to see if maybe this is your problem too. Number one is if you bring that arm out to the side and you're like, okay, not so bad there, but then it starts to get painful and you're like, oh, but then as you go further up, it gets better. That's a sign. That's just called a painful arc, a very technical term right there. But basically now that humerus is clearing that space once you reach a certain angle. Number two is if you take that arm or that hand and put it on your shoulder and lift that elbow up, if this hurts, it's a pretty clear indication that things are getting smushed in there. You can also take that arm and bring it out to the side and then rotate like you do in the robot. And you can start to bring it across at different angles. If it starts to hurt more and more, another sign that things are getting smushed. And then the last one is, if you bring those arms up with those thumbs up, and that doesn't feel so bad, but then you go to turn those thumbs down, and actually sometimes just this position hurts. And then raise those arms up, and it, again, hurts. Another good test on your own for you to be able to check those things out. So remember I said we need to open up that space. So that generally means opening up all this soft tissue stuff first. So what I generally like to do first is just get a little blood flow going. So I'm going to use the Derma Edge, and it feels crunchy. I do have shoulder issues that I work on. So we're just going to try to get into some of those muscles in through the chest and in through the front of that arm to get some blood flow going. And you may even notice that it starts to turn a little red. That's actually not a bad sign. It means that you're getting some blood flow. You do this until it feels a little less bumpy, a little less crunchy, or you do get a little bit of redness in there. And even that alone, you may go, oh, that feels nice, right? You can even get up into the upper trap a little bit because sometimes that's part of the issue too. Now, that's the front of the arm. To get into the back, remember I said we can be tilted forward like this. We're going to use a tennis ball. And I have mine in my fabulous turtle sock because I'm going to hold on to it that way. So we're going to place the tennis ball behind the shoulder blade on the wall. I'm going to use my right arm just because that's the way I'm facing you guys. But it Don't worry about exactly where you have to go. Look for some spots that are tight, and trust me, you'll find them when you find, oh, yeah. Shockingly, this side's tight too. So you're pressing kind of right against it. You can do a little rock back and forth. This is so the ball doesn't slide. And then I'm actually just gently, not super high, I'm going to bring that arm up and back down again. This is just releasing that muscle actively, which tends to work just a little better, but don't cause any of that pinching into the shoulder. Okay, that's really important. From there, we're going to go ahead and have a seat in this lovely old rickety chair. If you take a chair with a backrest that doesn't go all the way up, you're going to have a seat. I'm going to use this ball for later, so I'm just going to keep it here. If it feels okay, hands behind the head. If that hurts the shoulder, hands crossed over the chest. And you're going to lean and extend right back. This is a great way to not only open up the chest a little bit, but also to get into that thoracic spine, which, like I said, right, part of that is the problem when that gets tight. If you don't have a good chair for that, you can take a ball or a nice rolled up towel, and then again, put that right behind the back, and then you're extending back into that. And you might hear a little snap, crackle, and pop going on, and that's not a bad thing, as long as it doesn't hurt. All right, from there, we want to get a little rotation in through the spine, and this is where this ball, again, pillow or towel, comes in handy. This is going to help keep the rest of my hips and spine straight. I'm going to rotate through the middle of the spine, and I want to try to keep everything else still. So I'm going to squeeze into that ball, get a little inner thigh work too, and then I'm going to rotate one way, come on back, and rotate the other way, trying not to let yourself slump forward. Hey. Good. So now we have the soft tissue in the front and the back, and we're working on that thoracic spine. And now it's time to work on some of those muscles that tend to get a little bit weaker. First muscle that tends to get a little bit weaker is a muscle called your serratus anterior. And one of the easiest ways to work on that is actually right against the wall. So if you place your hands against the wall, and it's okay if it's uncomfortable to be up, you just keep them down a little bit. You want to think about rounding those shoulder blades, well, around the rib cage. So if you think about pressing away from the wall while those shoulders round around, that's usually the easiest way to get those to activate. And you may find that this is a little challenging. I know it doesn't seem that hard, right? But you really need to focus on kind of pushing away there. And you should feel it almost more towards in the rib cage area. The next exercise is going to focus on the muscles that rotate that shoulder out. So I'm going to lie right on my side, and I have a handy-dandy hat because it is winter here in New Hampshire, and you need a hat. So you can use a hat, you can use a towel, or even anything else you have handy that's soft. But this is going to go under the upper arm so that you squeeze down and can help not use that big front shoulder muscle. I'm going to grab a weight here, squeeze down into my hat, keep my wrist straight, and then I'm rotating that forearm up, squeezing into that shoulder blade first also, and then lifting. Goal is about 10 or so. You don't want to over fatigue these muscles because they're small, and then you'll have other issues going on too. All right, so notice I'm not lifting too high because if I do, I'll rotate backwards. Once this becomes easy, the other way to challenge these muscles is what we call eccentrically, so when they're lengthening, and a lot of times they tend to be weak there too. So to work that part, you would lift up and then very slowly, to the count of about 4 or 5, go back to the middle. So it's up and then slow, and you can see I'm shaking a little bit here too. I did do these the other day though. So up and then slowly lower. Now we can stay in this same position to get the last muscle, the lower trapezius, which I'm going to show you 2 exercises for. Again, no weight if it's uncomfortable or needs to work a little bit, right? So I am going to do this with no weight because, believe it or not, yes, this one is a little challenging for me. So squeezing into that shoulder blade, I'm going to bring my arm up. From here, I'm going to try to keep it from lowering up and down. And I'm going to raise it up towards my head and then back down. Don't forget, really squeeze into that shoulder blade. That's important, so you're not hiking it up and around. All right, same idea, about 10 reps or so. If that one is uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, the other one that I like is actually on the stomach. And I'm going to go right onto my stomach. And for this, you'll start with your palms kind of facing up as long as that feels okay. You can always start with them towards your legs too. But what you're going to do is lift that chest up a little bit, squeeze those shoulder blades down and back. And as I do that, I'm going to turn my hands out and really think about extending or bringing those hands down towards my feet and then coming back down. And you should feel this really pretty low down in through the shoulder blades. That's, like I said, that lower part of the trapezius, and probably 10 or so repetitions to start. Don't make it super duper tiring or fatiguing. Phew, a little tiring. All right, so there you have it. Opening up that space with the tissue, with the spine, and then strengthening it all up so you stop pinching right in on that area. Thank you so much for watching today. If you would like to support me as well as reduce some pain and get rid of the appearance of that cellulite, click the link below to order your own Derma Edge, a device that I created and patented when I was going through the middle of Lyme disease in a lot of pain and needed a way to work on my own body. So the shape of the Derma Edge allows you to get all body parts in a gentle way. We're getting that fluid moving in between the layers, which helps you move better, helps get rid of that pain, and decreases that bumpiness of the cellulite. So make sure to click the link below to order your own.